Admiral Jack Morrison had been asleep when the alert came through. He woke instantly, years of military training taking over before his mind fully registered what was happening. The emergency beacon flashed red on his bedside display, and the words made his heart pound. Protocol Midnight Sun activated. He dressed quickly and was out the door in 3 minutes. His apartment in Geneva was only 5 minutes from the Deep Space Defense headquarters, and he ran the entire distance. Other people were running too. Military personnel in various states of dress, all heading toward the same destination. Nobody spoke. There was nothing to say. The headquarters building was already blazing with light when Jack arrived. Security waved him through without the usual checks. He took the elevator down 7 floors to the command center, a massive underground facility that had been built 3,000 years ago and updated continuously ever since. The doors opened and Jack stepped into controlled chaos. Commander Lisa Grant saw him first. She was a tall woman in her 30s, with short black hair and the kind of intense focus that made her perfect for her job. She had been running the Sentinel Network's maintenance for 6 years, a position that most people thought was boring. Today it was the most important job in human space. "Admiral, good to see you," Lisa said, walking quickly to meet him. "Protocol Midnight Sun is active. All department heads are assembling in Conference Room Alpha. Director Price wants your assessment in 15 minutes. Jack nodded. "Status of the Sentinel Network?" "All systems responding. We have 47,000 automated defense platforms across human space. Every single one is coming online exactly as designed. Our ancestors built well, sir. How long until they're fully operational?" "They already are. The platforms have been running self-diagnostics every day for 3,000 years. They're ready now." Jack felt a surge of pride. The Sentinel Network was humanity's first line of defense, a grid of hidden weapons platforms scattered throughout human space. They were placed in asteroid fields inside hollow moons and buried in nebulae where sensors couldn't detect them. Each platform was equipped with weapons that could destroy a battleship, and each was controlled by advanced artificial intelligence that had been learning and improving for centuries. The conference room was filling with people when Jack arrived. He recognized most of them: scientists, military commanders, intelligence officers, and political leaders. Director Helen Price sat at the head of the table, looking tired but determined. "Admiral Morrison," Helen said, "thank you for coming so quickly. I need to know what we're working with. Can we defend New Adelaide?" Jack pulled up a holographic display above the table. "Yes, ma'am. New Adelaide has 17 Sentinel platforms in its system, including 3 near the planet itself. The colony also has planetary shields that were upgraded 2 years ago. They can withstand sustained bombardment from a fleet 3 times the size of what the Confederation is sending." A scientist named Claire Hudson spoke up. She was in her 40s with red hair pulled back in a practical bun. She ran the Mars Research Complex where humanity kept its most advanced weapons in storage. "We also have the weapons stockpiles. If we're activating Protocol Midnight Sun, that means we're releasing the restricted technologies. Relativistic kinetic missiles, quantum disruptors, antimatter warheads. We have enough firepower to glass a planet, though I pray we never need to use it that way." "What about ships?" asked another commander. "The Confederation is bringing 300 vessels. How many combat-ready ships can we deploy?" Jack had been preparing this answer. "We have 147 combat vessels that can reach New Adelaide within 72 hours. Another 200 that can arrive within a week. Our ships are smaller than theirs on average, but more advanced. We've spent 3,000 years watching other civilizations make mistakes in ship design. We learned from all of them." Lisa added more information. "Our fighters are equipped with stealth technology that the Confederation doesn't have. Their sensors work on principles we understood and surpassed 500 years ago. To their instruments, our Wraith-class fighters are invisible until the moment they fire." Helen listened carefully to all the reports. Then she asked the question everyone was thinking. "Can we win?" The room was quiet for a moment. Then Jack spoke, choosing his words carefully. "Ma'am, if this was a fair fight, we would lose. They have more ships, more soldiers, and an empire that spans thousands of worlds. But this isn't a fair fight. We have advantages they don't know about. We have weapons they've never seen. And we have something else. We've been watching them fight wars for 3,000 years. We know their tactics, their weaknesses, and their patterns. They know nothing about us. So you're saying yes?" "I'm saying we have a real chance. But we need to be smart. We need to use every advantage we have, and we need to move fast. Helen nodded slowly. Then make it happen. Activate everything. Wake up every ship, every platform, every weapon we've kept hidden. And get our people ready. This is going to change everything. On Mars, Claire Hudson led her team into the restricted vaults. These were underground facilities carved deep into the Martian rock, protected by layers of security that would take a week to bypass even if you had authorization. Claire had authorization and she moved quickly. The first vault contained the relativistic kinetic missiles. These were simple in concept but devastating in practice. Dense metal rods accelerated to 90% of light speed. When they hit something, the energy release was equivalent to a nuclear weapon but without the radiation. Humanity had built 5,000 of them over the centuries just in case. Start loading these onto transport ships, Claire ordered her team. New Adelaide gets priority, but spread them across all our defensive positions. The next vault held the quantum disruptors, weapons that could tear apart the bonds between atoms. They were clean, efficient, and horrifying. Claire had helped design the current generation, and she hated them even as she recognized their necessity. In another facility on Titan, the largest moon of Saturn, engineer Nicole Hayes supervised the final construction of humanity's new battle fleet. The ships had been built in secret over the past 20 years, assembled inside the moon's underground manufacturing centers. They were beautiful and deadly. Sleek hulls covered in armor that could absorb massive amounts of energy, engines that could accelerate faster than anything the Confederation had, and weapon systems that combined multiple technologies into devastating combinations. "How many are ready?" asked her assistant, a young man named Greg who looked nervous. 43 ships are fully operational, Nicole said. Another 60 will be ready within a month, but we don't have a month. These 43 will have to be enough for now. She looked at the nearest ship through the observation window. It was designated the Genesis Prime, and it would serve as Admiral Morrison's flagship. The ship was 500 meters long with enough firepower to take on 10 Confederation vessels at once. Nicole had poured her heart into its design, using lessons learned from 3,000 years of watching other species build warships. "They're beautiful," Greg said quietly. "They're tools," Nicole corrected. "Very expensive, very powerful tools that I hope we never have to use again after this war is over. But if we must fight, at least we'll fight with the best equipment in the galaxy." Across human space, similar preparations were happening. On Earth, pilot training facilities that had been running routine exercises for decades suddenly shifted to combat readiness. Lieutenant Kyle Price, a fighter pilot with 4 years of experience, found himself assigned to the new Wraith-class fighter program. Kyle was 25 years old, tall and fit, with the kind of confidence that came from being good at his job. He had always thought he would spend his career running peaceful patrols and training exercises. The idea of actual combat had seemed like ancient history, something his great-great-grandparents might have experienced. Now he stood in the hangar bay, looking at his assigned fighter, and reality hit him hard. The Wraith was smaller than the training craft he was used to, with smooth lines that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The cockpit was barely visible, integrated seamlessly into the hull. "Beautiful, isn't she?" said his instructor, a veteran pilot named Kate Morris. She was in her 50s, and she had spent 30 years training pilots for a war she thought might never come. The Wraith class is the most advanced fighter ever built by human hands. Stealth capabilities that make you invisible to every sensor the Confederation has. Weapons that can punch through battleship armor, and engines that can outrun anything in their fleet. Kyle walked around the fighter, running his hand along the smooth hull. "Will it be enough?" Kate smiled. "Son, this fighter represents 3,000 years of continuous improvement. Every generation of engineers made it a little better, a little smarter, a little deadlier. The Confederation builds their ships the same way their ancestors did 12,000 years ago, because they think they've already perfected everything. We kept learning, kept improving, kept preparing. So yes, it will be enough. The question is whether you're ready." Kyle looked at her. "I'm ready." "Good. Because in 72 hours, you're going to fly this fighter into the biggest battle humanity has fought in." Supreme Commander Vexthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable conquest, and felt satisfied with what he saw. 300 warships surrounded him in perfect formation, their engines burning steady as they approached the target system. In his 40 years of service to the Confederation, he had conquered 12 star systems and subjugated 23 species. This would be his 24th, and he expected it to be among the easiest. His species, the Drakthi, were natural warriors. They stood 8 feet tall with thick scales covering their bodies and 3 eyes that could see in multiple spectrums. Vexthor had earned his position through combat and cunning, and he did not tolerate failure. "Status report," he commanded, his voice a deep rumble that made junior officers flinch. "We will arrive at the target world in 1 hour." "Supreme Commander," replied his tactical officer, "all ships are at battle readiness. Troop carriers are prepared for planetary assault. Intelligence suggests minimal defense capabilities." Vexthor nodded. The intelligence reports had been clear. This human colony was small, isolated, and unregistered. They had no right to exist outside Confederation law. The fact that humans had managed to hide an entire civilization for so long was impressive, but it changed nothing. The Confederation had ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years, and they would continue to rule it for 12,000 more. "Prepare to drop out of faster-than-light travel on my command," Vexthor ordered. "All weapons charged, all shields at maximum. We will overwhelm them with our first strike and accept their surrender within 1 standard day." The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Adelaide system. For exactly 3 seconds, everything went according to plan. Then reality shattered. 20 Confederation ships exploded simultaneously. No warning. No incoming fire detected, just sudden and catastrophic destruction. Vexthor's 3 eyes widened in shock as his sensors screamed warnings. "Report!" he roared. "Unknown weapons fire from multiple locations," his tactical officer stammered, detecting weapons platforms hidden in the asteroid fields, inside hollow asteroids buried in the dust clouds. They were invisible until they fired. "Energy signatures are unknown, power levels beyond our prediction models." Another volley of fire lanced out from the hidden platforms. 15 more ships died, their shields failing to stop weapons that seemed to cut through them like paper. The beautiful formation Vexthor had maintained was breaking apart as ships scattered to avoid the devastating fire. "Return fire! Destroy those platforms!" Vexthor commanded. His fleet tried. They poured energy beams and missiles toward the locations where the fire originated, but hitting the platforms proved nearly impossible. They were small, mobile, and appeared to have their own stealth capabilities. When Confederation ships did manage to score hits, the platform's shields absorbed the damage easily. "Supreme Commander, we've lost 60 ships," his tactical officer reported, his voice breaking. "The platforms are using coordinated targeting. They're controlled by advanced artificial intelligence that predicts our movements." Vexthor made a decision. "All ships advance on the planet. Once we're in orbit, they won't fire at us for fear of hitting their own world. Prepare for orbital bombardment." It was sound tactical thinking based on 3,000 years of Confederation warfare doctrine. It was also exactly what Admiral Jack Morrison had predicted they would do. The Confederation fleet moved forward, trading fire with the Sentinel platforms as they fought their way deeper into the system. They lost another 40 ships in the process, but they reached New Adelaide and took up orbital positions. Vexthor allowed himself a moment of relief. They had taken heavy losses, but now they had the advantage. "Begin orbital bombardment," he ordered. "Target military installations first, then infrastructure. Show them the cost of resistance." The fleet's main weapons charged up and fired at the planet below. Massive energy beams capable of destroying cities lanced down through the atmosphere. They hit the planetary shields and stopped completely. Vexthor stared at his display in disbelief. "Impossible. Nothing can withstand that level of firepower." "The shields are reading at 97% capacity, Supreme Commander," his tactical officer said. "They've barely noticed our attack." Before Vexthor could respond, his sensors detected something new. Small craft were appearing throughout his fleet formation, materializing out of nowhere. Within seconds, Confederation ships began exploding from within their own ranks. Lieutenant Kyle Price pulled his Wraith fighter into a tight turn, his heart pounding with adrenaline. The stealth systems were working perfectly. The Confederation sensors couldn't see him until he was right on top of them. He lined up his shot on a Confederation cruiser, waited for the targeting computer to lock, and fired. The quantum torpedo left his fighter in silence. There was no dramatic flash, no trail of light. One moment the torpedo didn't exist, the next it was inside the cruiser's shield envelope, and then it detonated. The cruiser's hull ruptured from the inside, atmosphere and debris venting into space. Target destroyed, Kyle said calmly into his communication system, moving to next contact. Around him, 99 other Wraith fighters were doing the same thing. They had launched from the Genesis Prime and 2 other carriers that had been hiding on the far side of New Adelaide's moon. The element of surprise was total. Kate Morris, Kyle's instructor, flew wing position beside him. Her voice came through clear and steady. Remember your training. Pick your targets, make every shot count, don't get cocky. These Confederation pilots have combat experience even if their ships are inferior. Kyle acknowledged and moved toward another target, a destroyer that was trying to locate the source of the attacks. He fired again, watched the ship die, and moved on. It felt unreal, like a training simulation. But the debris was real, and somewhere in those explosions, real beings were dying. He pushed the thought away. They had come to conquer his world. He was defending his home. On the surface of New Adelaide, Governor Amy Stevens stood in the Planetary Defense Center, watching the battle unfold on massive displays. Colonel Ryan Blake stood beside her, coordinating with the orbital defenses. Shields holding at 95%, Ryan reported. The Confederation bombardment is having no effect. Our power reserves can maintain this level of shielding for months if necessary. Amy watched as another Confederation ship exploded on the display. How many have we destroyed? 117 ships confirmed destroyed. Admiral Morrison's fleet just entered the system. They're coming in from the outer edge behind the Confederation position. Amy allowed herself a small smile. The trap was working perfectly. 3,000 years of preparation were paying off. Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the Genesis Prime, watching his fleet emerge from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 43 ships against what remained of the Confederation fleet, roughly 180 vessels. Bad odds by any traditional measure, but Morrison wasn't planning a traditional battle. All ships weapons free, Morrison ordered. Target priority on their battleships and carriers. Coordinate with the Sentinel network and our fighter wings. Show them what 3,000 years of preparation looks like. The human fleet opened fire, and the difference in technology became immediately apparent. Where Confederation weapons took time to cycle between shots, human weapons fired in rapid succession. Where Confederation ships had to choose between shields and speed, human ships had both simultaneously. Where Confederation vessels moved predictably, human ships executed maneuvers that seemed to defy physics. Commander Lisa Grant, who had moved from Earth to take up position on the flagship, coordinated the Sentinel network from her station. Platforms 7 through 12, focus fire on the Confederation flagship. Platforms 13 through 20, provide cover for our fighter wings. Platforms 21 through 40 cut off their retreat vectors. The battle turned from a fight into a slaughter. Confederation ships tried to run, but found their faster-than-light engines wouldn't activate. Human gravity well generators throughout the system prevented any escape. They tried to fight, but found themselves overwhelmed by weapons they couldn't defend against and enemies they couldn't see. Supreme Commander Vex Thor watched his fleet die around him. In 30 minutes, he had lost 200 ships. His crews were panicking, his formations were shattered, and his certainty had turned to horror. "This is impossible," he whispered. "We are the Confederation. We rule this galaxy. How can one colony defeat us?" His tactical officer had no answers. "Supreme Commander, we must retreat. If we stay, we will all die." But there was nowhere to retreat to. The gravity wells prevented faster-than-light travel, and the human ships were systematically destroying every vessel that tried to reach the edge of the system. Vex Thor realized with cold clarity that he had led his fleet into a trap designed by an enemy far more sophisticated than his intelligence reports had suggested. "Send a message to Confederation space," Vex Thor ordered. "Tell them everything. Tell them these humans are not a primitive colony. Tell them we were wrong." He turned to his communication officer, broadcast on all frequencies. "Offer our unconditional surrender to the human forces." The message went out, and for a moment the firing stopped. The stars looked the same as they always did, cold, distant, and quiet. Captain Lucas Gray stood on the bridge of his ship, the horizon's edge, watching the endless void of space through the main viewport. His crew worked silently around him, monitoring screens and checking data. They had been stationed at the edge of the Kepler expanse for 2 years now, and most days were the same. Watch, listen, and stay hidden. Lucas was 43 years old with gray hair starting to show at his temples. He had spent his entire adult life in space just like his parents and grandparents before him. His family had been part of the Watch for 5 generations. It was an honor, they said, to protect humanity by staying invisible. "Captain, I'm picking up something unusual," said Megan Walsh from the pilot station. She was young, only 26, with sharp eyes and quick reflexes. Her fingers moved across her console, pulling up data streams. Lucas walked over to her station. "What kind of unusual?" "Long-range sensors are detecting a large fleet movement. Confederation ships, maybe 200 vessels, all heading in the same direction." Megan zoomed in on the display. "They're moving towards Sector 773. Lucas felt his chest tighten. Sector 773 contained New Adelaide, a human colony world with 6 million people. He kept his voice calm. "Peter, confirm those readings." Peter Kane, the science officer, was already working at his station. He was a thin man in his 50s, with thick glasses that he refused to replace with corrective surgery. "Confirmed, Captain. That's definitely the Confederation's 4th Fleet. 300 ships, not 200. They're on a direct course for New Adelaide." Sophie Blake, the ship's engineer, looked up from her work. She was a stocky woman with calloused hands and a no-nonsense attitude. "Do they know we're there? Did someone make a mistake?" "Unknown," Peter said, adjusting his glasses. "But if they're heading there with that much firepower, they know something." Lucas had trained for this moment his entire life, but now that it was here, it felt unreal. For 3,000 years, humanity had hidden among the stars. They had watched alien civilizations rise and fall. They had seen wars that destroyed entire planets. They had learned, adapted, and grown stronger in silence. The doctrine of silence had kept humanity safe since the year 2089, when the Calamity Wars nearly destroyed Earth. Back then, humanity had reached for the stars too quickly, made contact too eagerly, and trusted too easily. The wars that followed killed 3 billion people. When the survivors finally achieved peace, they made a choice. They would go to the stars again, but this time they would do it quietly. They would watch and learn before revealing themselves. And so humanity spread across the galaxy like ghosts. They built colonies on distant worlds, established research stations in hidden nebulae, and created an early warning network that spanned hundreds of light years. They watched the Confederation of Sovereign Worlds, a massive alliance of 200 alien species, rule the Orion Arm with an iron fist. They saw species conquered, absorbed, or destroyed for refusing to join. Humanity never joined. Humanity stayed quiet. "Captain, I'm intercepting Confederation communications," Megan said. "They're not encrypted very well." "Shall I put it on speakers?" "Do it," Lucas ordered. The bridge filled with the sound of alien voices translated by the ship's computer. The language sounded harsh, with clicking consonants and growling vowels. "All ships maintain formation. The target world harbors an unregistered civilization. Under Confederation law, all intelligent species must register and submit to Confederation authority. Failure to comply is considered an act of aggression." Another voice responded. "Supreme Commander Vexthor, what if they resist? Then we will show them why resistance is futile. We will eliminate their military capabilities and occupy their world. The Confederation has ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years. We will not allow an unknown species to threaten our order." The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. Sophie spoke first, her voice quiet. "They're going to attack New Adelaide." Lucas moved to the communication station. "Send an emergency quantum burst to Earth. Priority level absolute. Include all data we've collected on the Confederation fleet." "Sending now," Megan said. Her hands moved quickly across the controls. "Message away. Earth should receive it in approximately 4 minutes. 4 minutes. That was the advantage of quantum communication. One of humanity's greatest technological achievements. Messages could cross vast distances almost instantly, using entangled particles that defied normal physics. The Confederation didn't have this technology. It was one of many advantages humanity had developed during their long silence. Peter was already analyzing the Confederation ships. "Captain, their fleet composition is standard. Battleships, cruisers, and troop carriers. Their weapons technology is approximately 70 years behind ours, based on the designs we've observed. Their shields are less efficient and their engines produce more heat signatures." "Good," Lucas said. "That information will help Earth make their decision." "What decision?" Sophie asked, though she already knew the answer. Lucas looked at his crew. These were good people, brave people who had dedicated their lives to protecting humanity, the decision whether to stay hidden or to fight. On Earth, in the city of Geneva, director Helen Price received the message. She was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and tired eyes. She had been the elected leader of the United Terran Coalition for 15 years, and in all that time, she had never faced anything like this. She stood before the Grand Council, a gathering of representatives from every human colony world, and read the report aloud. When she finished, the council chamber erupted in debate. Some argued for evacuation, others for immediate military response. One representative suggested revealing humanity's presence and attempting diplomacy. Another said they should abandon New Adelaide and go deeper into hiding. Helen let them talk for 10 minutes, then raised her hand for silence. The chamber quieted. "We have built our civilization on the principle of survival through caution," she said. "For 3,000 years we have hidden, learned, and prepared. Our ancestors suffered through the Calamity Wars so that we would never suffer again. But now the Confederation has found us. They have not come with greetings or curiosity. They have come with warships and threats." She paused, looking at each representative. "If we run now, they will chase us. If we hide again, they will find us again. If we surrender, we will spend the next 1,000 years under their control, watching our freedom disappear. Our ancestors prepared us for this moment. They built weapons we hoped we would never use. They created defense networks that have waited in silence for centuries. They gave us the tools to defend ourselves." Another representative stood. "But we are one species. They are 200. How can we possibly win?" Helen smiled grimly. "Because we have something they don't. We have spent 3,000 years watching them fight their wars, learning from their mistakes, and building better solutions. We know their weaknesses. We have prepared for every possibility. And most importantly, we have a choice. We can choose to fight for our freedom, or we can choose to surrender it. I know which choice our ancestors would make." The vote was called. One by one, the representatives cast their decision. Some voted with tears in their eyes. Others voted with anger. But when the final count was complete, the result was unanimous. Humanity would fight. Helen activated the emergency broadcast system, sending a message to every human world, station, and ship. "Citizens of humanity, for 3,000 years we have lived in peace. We have built beautiful worlds, advanced our knowledge, and raised our children in safety. But that peace has been threatened. The Confederation of Sovereign Worlds has discovered our existence and demands our surrender. They approach our colony of New Adelaide with 300 warships. They believe we will submit without resistance. They are wrong." She took a breath. "Today we activate Protocol Midnight Sun. Today we show the galaxy that humanity is not prey. We are not victims. We are the species that survived the Calamity Wars and chose to live in peace. But we never forgot how to fight. To all military personnel, report to your stations. To all civilians, trust in the preparations our ancestors made. And to the Confederation, we send this message. Leave our worlds in peace or learn why humanity chose to stay hidden." On the horizon's edge, Lucas and his crew listened to the broadcast in silence. When it ended, Megan spoke softly. "I guess we're going to war." Lucas nodded. "Set course for New Adelaide. Maximum speed. It's time to stop watching and start fighting." The ship turned toward the distant colony world, its engines burning bright in the darkness of space. Behind them, across hundreds of human worlds, millions of people prepared for the fight of their civilization's life. 3,000 years of silence was about to end with thunder. The Confederation High Council chamber on Tier Prime had stood for 8,000 years. Its walls were carved from a single massive crystal that glowed with internal light, and its ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. 200 species were represented here, each with their own cultural traditions and histories. But today they all shared the same emotion: shock. Representative Zalmon of the earthy species slammed his four-fingered hand on his speaking podium. The earthy were insect-like beings, with compound eyes and chittering voices that the translation software rendered into standard language. "This is an outrage. The Fourth Fleet was destroyed. 300 ships, 50,000 soldiers, all gone. We must respond with overwhelming force." The council chamber erupted in debate. Some agreed with Zalmon, calling for immediate retaliation. Others urged caution, pointing out that they knew almost nothing about these humans or their capabilities. The arguments grew heated, with several species nearly coming to blows before the council speaker called for order. Silence. The speaker's voice boomed through the chamber. She was a member of the Torvan species, large beings with gray skin and 4 arms. We will hear from our military advisors before making any decisions. Grand Admiral Torvan stepped forward. He was considered the greatest military mind in Confederation history, a legend among all species. He was Drakthi, like the defeated Vexthor, but older and far more experienced. His scales were scarred from countless battles, and his 3 eyes had seen things that would break lesser beings. Council members, Torvan began, his voice calm and measured. I have reviewed all available data from the Battle of New Adelaide. I have watched the recordings from the ships that escaped, and I have studied the humans' tactical approach. My assessment is this. We have encountered a civilization that is technologically superior to us in several key areas. The chamber erupted again. Several representatives shouted denials, unable to accept that the mighty Confederation could be outmatched by an unknown species. Torvan waited for silence, then continued. Their stealth technology makes their fighters invisible to our sensors. Their weapons penetrate our shields with ease. Their defensive platforms show coordination and intelligence far beyond our own automated systems. And most concerning, they clearly knew we were coming. This was not a desperate defense. It was a trap, perfectly executed. Ambassador Kreeth, the oldest member of the council, rose slowly from his seat. The Kree were an ancient species, the first to join what would become the Confederation 12,000 years ago. They looked like tall, thin humanoids with pale blue skin and large eyes. Kreeth was over 300 years old, and his voice carried weight that came from centuries of experience. Grand Admiral, Kreeth said softly, you speak of technological superiority, but I sense something else in your report. Fear, perhaps. Torvan met the ancient being's gaze without flinching. Respect, Ambassador. I respect an enemy who can defeat a fleet of 300 ships while losing only 12 fighters. I respect a civilization that remained hidden for so long while building such capabilities. And yes, I am concerned about what else they might have that we haven't seen yet. Then what do you recommend? The speaker asked. If the council orders me to attack, I will attack, Torvan said. I will take the 2nd, 5th, and 7th fleets, 1,000 ships in total, and I will move against the human homeworld. I will bring enough firepower to overwhelm any defense, but I want the council to understand the cost. We will win eventually through sheer numbers, but the losses will be significant. And every species in the galaxy will see that the mighty Confederation can be hurt. Zalman stood again. The cost is irrelevant. We cannot allow this defiance to stand. If other species see that humans can resist us, they will try to resist as well. The order we have maintained for 12,000 years will collapse. Kreeth spoke again, his ancient voice carrying across the chamber. Perhaps the order should change. I am old enough to remember stories from before the Confederation, stories passed down through my ancestors. One of those stories speaks of a warrior species from a blue world, beings who appeared in our galaxy 5,000 years ago. They fought with incredible ferocity, then vanished without explanation. Could these humans be the same species? Ancient legends, Zalman scoffed. We need action, not children's stories. Legends often contain truth, Kreeth replied. And if these legends are true, they warn us. They say the humans disappeared not because they were weak, but because they were preparing, and the legends say that if they returned, we should not provoke them. The debate continued for hours. Finally, a vote was called. The result was decisive. The Confederation would mobilize its fleets and attack the human homeworld. They would demonstrate that resistance was futile, and that the Confederation's dominance could not be challenged. Grand Admiral Torvan accepted his orders without comment. He would do his duty, even though his instincts told him this would not be as simple as the Council believed. On Earth, Director Helen Price addressed humanity once again. News of the victory at New Adelaide had spread across all human worlds, bringing celebration and relief. But Helen knew the celebration was premature. My fellow humans, she began, her face appearing on screens across hundreds of worlds. We have won our first battle. The Confederation learned that we will not surrender without a fight. But this victory will bring consequences. The Confederation has ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years. They will not accept our defiance. They will send more ships, more soldiers, and more weapons. The real war is just beginning. She paused, letting her words sink in. We knew this day might come. Our ancestors prepared us for it. But preparation is not enough. We must be smart, we must be united, and we must strike first. We cannot wait for them to bring the war to our doorstep again. We must take the fight to them. Strategic planner Nathan Cole stood beside Helen, pulling up holographic displays showing Confederation space. Nathan was 40 years old, thin and nervous-looking, but his mind was brilliant. He had spent 20 years studying Confederation military logistics, and now that knowledge would be put to use. The Confederation's strength is their size, Nathan explained. 200 species, thousands of worlds, millions of ships. But size is also their weakness. They depend on supply lines that span hundreds of light years. They need communication networks to coordinate their forces. They rely on military installations spread across their territory. If we disrupt these systems, we can level the playing field. Helen nodded. Operation Thunder Road. We strike 20 systems simultaneously. Not their homeworlds, but their infrastructure. Supply depots, communication hubs, sensor arrays, and shipyards. We make them blind and hungry. We show them that humanity can reach anywhere we choose. Admiral Morrison appeared on the display from his flagship. We have the resources to execute this operation. Our stealth ships can penetrate deep into Confederation space without being detected. Our special operations teams are ready, and our intelligence network has been watching these targets for centuries. We know exactly where to hit them. Across human space, military units prepared for the largest offensive operation in their civilization's history. They would no longer simply defend their worlds. They would carry the fight to an enemy that had never known fear. Captain Lucas Gray received new orders for the Horizon's Edge. His ship would lead a strike team to the Deneb system, home to one of the Confederation's largest sensor arrays. The array monitored an entire sector of space, providing early warning of any threats. Destroying it would blind the Confederation across 15 light years. How are we supposed to destroy something that well defended? Megan Walsh asked, studying the mission briefing. The sensor array was protected by orbital weapons platforms, shield generators, and a garrison of 5,000 soldiers. Lucas smiled. We're not going to attack it directly. We're going to infiltrate it. Special Operations Commander Jake Riley and his team of 12 soldiers joined the Horizon's Edge for the mission. Jake was a quiet man in his 30s, with the kind of calm demeanor that came from years of dangerous work. His team specialized in operations that officially didn't exist, the kind of missions that required getting in and out without anyone knowing they were there. The sensor array has a maintenance crew of 200 beings, Jake explained to Lucas and his bridge crew. They rotate shifts every 6 hours. We've been monitoring their patterns for 2 years. We know their schedules, their procedures, and their security protocols. We're going to pose as a maintenance crew, get inside, plant quantum charges at key structural points, and leave. By the time the charges detonate, we'll be light years away. And if something goes wrong? Sophie Blake asked. Jake's expression didn't change. Then we adapt. That's what we do. Similar operations were being planned across human space. Lieutenant Sarah Morgan would lead a team to disable the shipyards at Arcturus Station. Commander Ben Woods would take his stealth ship to eliminate listening posts along the Confederation's border. Engineer Nicole Hayes would coordinate the technical aspects of each operation, ensuring the charges and equipment were perfectly calibrated. The operations launched simultaneously across 20 systems. The Horizon's Edge arrived at the Deneb System. Grand Admiral Torvan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and studied the display showing Earth's solar system. Behind him stretched 1,000 warships, the combined might of 3 Confederation fleets. It was the largest military force assembled in 500 years, and he had brought it to crush humanity once and for all. All ships report ready, Grand Admiral, his tactical officer said. We await your order to advance. Torvan nodded slowly. He had spent weeks planning this assault, studying every scrap of data about human capabilities. He knew they had superior technology. He knew they were clever and well prepared. But he also knew that numbers mattered, and he had the numbers. Begin the advance, he ordered. All ships maintain formation. Shields at maximum. Weapons charged. Expect heavy resistance. The massive fleet moved forward, crossing into the solar system that humans called home. Torvan expected immediate attack, like what happened at New Adelaide. Instead, there was only silence. His sensors showed the system ahead, with its 8 planets orbiting a yellow star. Earth, the 3rd planet, showed signs of massive population centers and industrial activity. "This is too easy," muttered his second-in-command, a veteran officer named Colrath. "Where are their defenses?" The answer came 5 minutes later when they crossed an invisible line in space. The system came alive with weapons fire. But these weren't hidden platforms in asteroid fields. These were weapons everywhere. Every moon, every planet, every large asteroid. The entire solar system was a fortress. "Incoming fire from all directions," the tactical officer shouted. Thousands of weapons platforms activating. Energy signatures consistent with what we saw at New Adelaide, but the count is... It's impossible. There are tens of thousands of them. Torvan watched his display fill with red markers indicating weapons platforms. Commander Lisa Grant's Sentinel network had grown far beyond what he had imagined. 3,000 years of preparation meant 3,000 years of building, improving, and expanding defensive systems. "All ships, return fire. Fighter wings launch. Begin systematic destruction of the platforms," Torvan ordered. He kept his voice calm, but internally he was reassessing everything. The humans had turned their entire home system into a weapon. Admiral Jack Morrison watched from the bridge of the Genesis Prime as the battle began. The human home fleet, 500 of their most advanced ships, waited behind Earth's moon. This was the moment 3,000 years of preparation had built toward. "Sir, the Confederation fleet is engaging the Sentinel network," reported a tactical officer. "They're taking heavy losses but advancing steadily. They have too many ships. The platforms can't stop them all." Morrison nodded. He had known this would happen. The Confederation's numbers were too great to stop with automated defenses alone. "Signal all ships. Prepare to engage, and activate the Omega Array." On Mars, scientist Claire Hudson initiated the sequence she had programmed years ago, hoping she would never need to use it. The Omega Array was humanity's ultimate defensive weapon. A network of satellites positioned throughout the solar system. Each satellite generated a specific electromagnetic frequency, and when they all activated together, they created a pulse tuned precisely to Confederation technology. "Omega Array charging," Claire reported to Morrison. 30 seconds to full power. Torvan saw half his fleet's systems shut down simultaneously. Engines failed, weapons went offline, shields collapsed. 500 of his 1,000 ships became helpless targets drifting in space. "What happened?" he demanded. "Unknown energy pulse throughout the system," his tactical officer replied, frantically working his controls. "It's overloading our systems. Our technology is incompatible with the frequency. It's like they designed this weapon specifically to counter our ships they had." Humanity had spent 3,000 years studying Confederation technology, learning every detail of how their systems worked. The Omega Array was the result, a weapon that turned the Confederation's own technology against them. Morrison gave the order. "All ships engage." The human fleet emerged from behind the moon and struck the disabled Confederation ships with devastating precision. Within 10 minutes, 300 Confederation vessels were destroyed. The remaining 200 that still had power tried to reform their lines, but they were outnumbered now and fighting an enemy that could see their every move. Lieutenant Kyle Price launched from the Genesis Prime in his Wraith fighter, leading a squadron of 50 pilots. They dove into the Confederation formation like sharks into a school of fish. Kyle had survived the battle at New Adelaide, and the experience had changed him. He was no longer the confident young pilot who thought war was ancient history. He was a veteran now, and he knew the cost of every trigger pull, but he also knew what he was fighting for. His parents lived on Earth. His sister taught at a school in North America. His friends, his culture, his entire civilization depended on winning this battle. "Stay sharp," Kate Morris said over the communication system. She flew beside him again just like at New Adelaide. "Their remaining ships are trying to regroup. Don't let them." The battle raged across the solar system. Near Mars, Commander Ben Woods led a squadron of stealth ships against Confederation carriers, destroying them before they could launch more fighters. Near Jupiter, Engineer Nicole Hayes coordinated defensive platforms that protected the massive shipyards hidden in the gas giants' moons. Near Saturn, Special Forces under Jake Riley's command boarded and captured a Confederation battleship, turning its weapons against its former allies. On Earth's surface, billions of people watched the battle unfold on displays across every city and town. Governor Amy Stevens, who had defended New Adelaide and was now visiting Earth, stood beside Director Helen Price in the command center beneath Geneva. "We're winning," Amy said, watching the tactical displays. "We're surviving," Helen corrected. But yes, we're doing better than I hoped. On the Eternal Dominion, Grand Admiral Torvan faced the truth. He was losing. His fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that had prepared for this exact scenario. He had brought 1,000 ships and less than 100 remained combat effective. His communication officer spoke urgently. Grand Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship. Admiral Morrison wishes to speak with you. Torvan almost laughed. Speak? What was there to say? But he accepted the transmission, and Morrison's face appeared on his display. Grand Admiral Torvan, Morrison said, and Torvan was surprised to hear respect in the human's voice. You have fought well. Your tactics were sound and your courage is evident. But this battle is over. Surrender now, and your remaining crews will be treated with honor. Continue fighting and they will all die for nothing. Torvan's 3 eyes studied the human admiral. He saw no cruelty there, no triumph, only tired determination. You knew we would come, Torvan said. You were ready for us. We've been ready for 3,000 years, Morrison replied. We watched your civilization fight its wars. We learned from your victories and your defeats. We built our defenses specifically to counter your tactics. You never had a chance, Admiral. But you fought with honor, and for that you have my respect. Torvan looked at his tactical display one more time, seeing the red markers that represented the last remnants of his proud fleet. Then he made the hardest decision of his life. I surrender, he said quietly. All Confederation ships cease fire. Power down weapons and shields. The battle ended. The solar system fell silent except for the recovery operations as human ships moved among the wreckage, rescuing survivors and securing prisoners. Morrison allowed himself a moment of relief before returning to the endless tasks of post-battle operations. 3 days later, Director Helen Price traveled to Tier Prime for the first time. She brought with her a delegation that included Admiral Morrison, Ambassador Creeth, who had requested to join them, and representatives from 20 human worlds. They came not as conquerors, but as equals demanding recognition. The High Council chamber was quiet when Helen entered. 200 species watched her, some with hostility, others with curiosity, and a few with something that might have been respect. She stood before them and spoke clearly. Members of the Confederation, I am Helen Price, elected leader of the United Terran Coalition. For 3,000 years, humanity has existed in this galaxy. Without your knowledge or permission, we built a civilization based on peace, learning, and preparation. We never sought conflict with you, but when you threatened our worlds, we defended ourselves. Salmon stood, his insect-like features showing anger. You destroyed 2 of our fleets. Thousands of our people died. And you dare come here speaking of peace? Your fleets came to conquer us, Helen replied calmly. We gave them the choice to leave peacefully. They chose war. We chose survival. And we will always choose survival. Ambassador Creeth rose from his seat and the chamber quieted. The ancient being walked slowly to stand beside Helen. I have lived for 300 years, he said. I have seen the Confederation grow from a union of 5 species to an empire of 200. I have seen us bring order to chaos, peace to warring worlds. But I have also seen us become what we once feared, conquerors who demand submission rather than offering partnership. He turned to face the council.